Welcome to the Nonprofit Compliance Brief, where we explain charitable solicitation and multi-state fundraising requirements in clear, practical terms for nonprofit leaders and finance teams. This podcast is produced by Ironwood Registrations.
It is great to be here for this deep dive today.
Yeah, I am really looking forward to getting into this one because today we're tackling a subject that sits right at that uncomfortable intersection of human resources and legal compliance.
Oh, yes, the absolute headache generator for leadership.
Exactly. It is a topic that usually results in a migraine for executive directors and CFOs alike. We are talking about staff turnover,
Right.
but we aren't going to spend our time today talking about the cost of recruitment or how hard it is to write a good job description. We're looking at a deeper issue.
No, those are the obvious problems. Everyone focuses on the empty desk. We are looking at the invisible problem today, the silent crisis that happens in the background while everyone is distracted by the empty desk.
Yeah, when a key staff member leaves, the immediate panic is usually about capacity, like who is going to run the donor report this week or who is going to manage the spring gala.
Totally natural reactions.
Right. But the argument we are unpacking in this deep dive is that turnover is actually a massive legal risk.
It is. And the core thesis here is it is actually a bit unsettling for a lot of organizations when they finally realize it.
How so?
Well, the reality is that for the vast majority of nonprofits, and I mean even the large sophisticated ones, compliance isn't actually a system.
Okay.
It is a person.
Wow. That is a scary distinction. Compliance isn't a system, it is a person.
It is terrifying if you really think about it.
Yeah, I can imagine.
If your entire regulatory framework, your filing deadlines, your state registrations, and all your historical knowledge are locked inside the brain of one employee named, let's call her Susan.
Okay, let's go with Susan.
Then your compliance system essentially walks out the door the moment Susan decides to retire or take a new job.
So effectively, the organization thinks it has a robust compliance department, but what it really has is just Susan.
Precisely. Just Susan. And when Susan leaves, the system collapses.
And I am guessing it is not an immediate collapse.
Not immediately, which is actually part of the danger, but it is inevitable.
Let's rewind a bit because I want to know how organizations get into this position in the first place. I assume most nonprofits don't intentionally set out to build a house of cards. Is it just negligence?
Surprisingly, no. It is rarely negligence. It is actually the opposite in most cases.
The opposite.
Yeah, this situation usually arises because you have really good employees. We call it the slow drift of responsibility.
Wait, so having good employees causes the compliance breakdown?
Paradoxically, yes, it does. Think about how roles evolve in a nonprofit environment.
Okay.
You hire a development coordinator or a finance assistant. They are sharp, they are organized, and they are eager to help. Over 2 or 3 years, they just start handling things.
Right, the classic other duties as assigned clause in the job description.
Exactly. A renewal notice for Florida comes in the mail. They pay it.
Makes sense.
A registered agent emails about a service of process. They handle it. They create a folder on their desktop. They save the password in their browser, and they just get it done.
And from a leadership perspective, I mean, that looks like a huge win. It looks like efficiency.
It looks perfect.
Yeah.
The executive director sees that the work is getting done and assumes the organization is compliant.
But the organization isn't compliant.
Note, the employee is compliant. The institutional knowledge is entirely tacit. It is locked in their head or their personal inbox.
They haven't built a process that anyone else can follow.
Right. They have just built a personal habit. So when they leave, the organization doesn't just lose a worker. They lose the entire logic of their legal status.
This brings us to the concept of the single point of failure. I know we usually hear that term in engineering or IT, like a server that brings down the whole network if it crashes, but it feels very literal here.
It is very literal. And we need to get specific about the mechanics of this failure because it is not abstract at all. It is physical and it is digital.
So walk us through that breakdown. What is the most common point of failure when that key person walks out the door?
The first and honestly the most devastating is the calendar.
Really? The calendar? That sounds so basic. Everyone has a calendar?
But whose calendar is it? That is the million-dollar question.
Hey.
In a person-dependent system, the deadline for, say, the Pennsylvania charitable registration is a recurring event on that specific employee's personal Outlook or Google Calendar.
So the day the IT department does their offboarding checklist and shuts off that email account.
The deadline effectively ceases to exist for the organization.
Wow.
The state of Pennsylvania still knows it is due. The clock is still ticking externally, But inside the building, the trigger to act is just gone. It vanished with the email address.
And I imagine this gets even more complicated with modern security measures like two-factor authentication.
Oh, two-factor authentication is the silent killer of transitions. We see this constantly.
Walk me through a scenario with that.
Okay, so you have a state portal login, let's say for New York or California. To log in, it requires a verification code.
And that code is being texted to a cell phone number.
Specifically, the personal cell phone of the employee who left 3 weeks ago.
So you are completely locked out.
Locked out. And you can't reset the password because the reset link goes to the email address that you just deactivated.
You're at a digital catch-22.
Exactly. To fix it, you often have to get a notarized letter, mail it to a state agency, or sit on hold for 3 hours. Meanwhile, the clock is ticking on your filing deadline.
So you aren't just battling the deadline, you are battling the access just to see the deadline.
And even if you do somehow hack your way into the account, you hit what we call the process gap.
What is the process gap?
Well, even if you have the password, do you know what to upload? The departing employee knew that for a specific state, you need to attach the addendum about the fundraising council. Or you need to use a specific calculation for the filing fee. Does the new hire know that?
Probably not, because there is no manual. The manual was the previous employee.
Precisely. And this leads to what we call the discovery phase.
Okay, so let's play this out. The key employee leaves. There's a farewell party, maybe some cake in the break room. Everyone is sad, but they are focused on hiring the replacement. What happens next? Does the building burn down the next day?
That is the dangerous part. No, the building doesn't burn down. In fact, nothing happens. Everything seems totally fine.
Which creates a massive false sense of security.
Huge. Payroll still runs, donors still donate, the lights stay on. The remaining team breathes a sigh of relief because they survived the transition. They think, okay, we are stable.
But the compliance clock is running on a totally different timeline.
Right. Compliance issues are slow-moving. They surface 60, 90, sometimes 120 days later.
And how do they usually surface?
Usually through what we call the ghost notice.
The ghost notice. That sounds like a horror movie.
It sort of is for a finance director. A state regulator sends a renewal reminder via email, but because the account was tied to the former employee and that inbox is unmonitored or deleted, the notice just goes into the void.
So the state thinks they warned you. They have a timestamp saying, notice sent.
And you think everything is fine because you haven't heard anything. Silence is interpreted as safety.
That is a dangerous assumption.
Then you start finding incomplete trails. You find a PDF on a shared drive called Draft Filing Version 2.
Oh, no.
Was it sent? Did they upload it? Did they actually cut the check for the fee?
You have to become a forensic accountant for your own history.
You really do. And while you are playing detective, trying to piece together what happened 4 months ago, the unanswered correspondence is escalating.
Escalating how?
Well, a regulator might have asked a simple clarifying question 3 months ago. Maybe something like, please clarify the disparity in line 14 of your revenue report.
Which is a very manageable problem if you answer it right away.
It is trivial if you answer it. But if it sits for 90 days, that turns into a formal inquiry, a fine, or in some states, an automatic revocation of your status to solicit funds.
All because an email went to a dead inbox.
All because the system was a person.
There is another psychological layer to this that I think is really important to address for you listening. We are talking about the danger of the transition period. When a role is vacant, the rest of the team is usually pretty stressed out, right?
Absolutely. They are overloaded picking up the slack, and this introduces operational bias.
Operational bias. Tell me more about that.
When a team is short-staffed, they circle the wagons around what they consider mission-critical operations.
Which makes sense. You focus on money and mission.
Exactly. You focus on the fundraising gala, the donor calls, the program delivery. That is survival mode compliance. That looks like paperwork. It looks like admin.
It feels like something you can do next month. It feels postponable.
People say we will handle the state registrations once we hire the new director. It is a very logical, very human thought process.
But the state doesn't care about your logic.
The state regulators are essentially algorithms. The deadline is a hard integer. It doesn't pause because you are stressed. It doesn't pause because you are hiring. It doesn't pause because you are doing good work in the community.
That is a tough reality check.
Yeah.
I want to double click on this idea of tacit knowledge, or the black box that you mentioned earlier. We talked about passwords,
Yeah.
but it is more than just access, isn't it? It is context.
Context is the hardest thing to recover. Explicit knowledge is facts like we file in California. You can look that up easily. Tacit knowledge is the how and the why.
Could you give us a concrete example of that difference?
Sure, think about document storage. This sounds mundane, but it creates real crises. Where are the files actually stored?
Are they on a server somewhere?
Are they in the organizational Dropbox? Are they in SharePoint? Or are they on the hard drive of the laptop that IT just wiped to give to the new intern?
Oh, that sends a shiver down my spine. The wiped laptop scenario.
It happens constantly. And once that history is gone, you aren't just late for this year. You have lost the baseline for every future year. You have to reconstruct your history with the state from scratch.
Which costs a ton of time. And money.
An enormous amount of time.
Yeah.
You're paying high-level staff to solve administrative puzzles instead of doing their actual jobs.
Let's shift gears and look at this from the regulator's perspective. I feel like there is a tendency, especially in the nonprofit sector, to rely on goodwill.
Yes, the halo effect.
Right. We think we are the good guys, we cure diseases, we feed people. If we call the state and explain, look, Susan left and we are really scrambling, surely they cut us some slack.
You would hope so. But the cold truth is that the grace period for Julie leaving or Susan leaving does not exist.
Why is that? Is it just government bureaucracy?
It comes down to legal definitions. From the regulator's perspective, who is the registrant? It is not Susan. It is the corporation, the legal entity.
And the entity did not change.
The entity still exists, it still solicits funds, and it still has legal obligations.
So internal HR drama is completely irrelevant to external legal standing.
Completely irrelevant. The state views staff turnover as a standard business condition. It is entirely foreseeable. Therefore, the state argues you should have planned for it.
That is harsh, but I guess it is fair from a strictly legal standpoint.
It is. When you get that fine for $2,000 because a renewal was 3 months late and you appeal saying our director left about, the response is almost always a form letter denying the appeal.
Okay, we have sufficiently terrified everyone listening to this deep dive. We have established that the person-dependent model is a ticking time bomb, and the regulators aren't going to save us. Let's talk about the fix. How do we move to a system-dependent model?
We have to build safety nets that don't rely on a specific human brain. And the good news is these aren't expensive software solutions. They are mostly process changes.
So what is step one?
Step one is the centralized calendar.
But not just a calendar invite.
No, a shared master compliance calendar. It needs to be accessible by multiple roles: finance, development, and leadership.
Right.
If the compliance manager wins the lottery and disappears tomorrow, the finance director's phone should still buzz on May 15th saying, Form 990 due.
Redundancy.
Redundancy is safety. You cannot have critical dates living on a private calendar.
What about the email issue? You mentioned the ghost notice earlier. How do we stop that from happening?
This is one of the most important takeaways you can implement right away. Role-based emails. Stop using personal emails for official business with the state.
So instead of susan@nonprofit.org, we use
compliance@nonprofit.org, finance@nonprofit.org, and crucially, that email address should be a distribution list.
So when an email hits that inbox, it doesn't just go to one person.
Right. It forwards to Susan, but it also forwards to the CFO and maybe the admin assistant. That way, even if Susan leaves and her personal email is shut down, the compliance address keeps working.
And the notices keep arriving in the other inboxes.
Yep.
You never lose the line of communication.
Exactly. You eliminate the single point of failure right there.
What about the password issue? The old sticky note under the keyboard trick.
You have to move to an enterprise password manager. LastPass, 1Password, whatever your IT team prefers. But the credentials must belong to the organization, not the user.
So you can grant access and revoke access without losing the underlying key.
Correct. It separates the human from the asset.
This leads into the concept of cross-team visibility. We talked about how compliance gets siloed. How do you break that down in a practical way?
You have to make compliance a standing agenda item. It doesn't need to be long. But in the monthly finance meeting or the quarterly board meeting, there should be a compliance health check.
Just a simple status update?
Red, yellow, green. Are we up to date? What is coming due next month? Do we have access to everything? If you ask those 3 questions regularly, you eliminate the mystery.
It stops being Susan's secret project and starts being an organizational metric.
And that protects Susan, too. It means she isn't carrying the entire weight of the organization's legal standing on her shoulders alone. If she gets sick or goes on a long vacation, someone else knows what is happening.
Now, in the midst of all this doom and gloom about turnover, is there a silver lining here? Is there any good news?
There actually is. Turnover is painful, yes, but it is also a massive opportunity to hit the reset button.
What do you mean by that?
When a long-term employee leaves, they take their knowledge, but they also take their habits. And let's be honest, not all of Susan's habits were efficient.
True. She might have been doing things the hard way just because that is how we did it in 2019.
Exactly. Turnover is the specific moment where you are forced to audit the workflow. You have to look at the job and ask, does this actually make sense anymore?
So instead of just blindly plugging the hole with a new body, you look at the shape of the hole.
You might realize you don't need to hire a replacement who does exactly what Susan did. Maybe you realize that 40% of her time was spent on a manual data entry that can now be automated.
Or maybe you realize that compliance shouldn't be in development at all, and it should move to finance.
It is the difference between patching a leak and upgrading the plumbing.
That is a great analogy. One stops the water today, the other prevents the flood tomorrow.
If you use the transition to document processes, to actually write down the standard operating procedures or SOPs, you are making the organization fundamentally more valuable.
SOPs. That acronym usually makes people's eyes glaze over. It sounds like pure bureaucracy.
It sounds boring, I know. But think of it as a checklist for a temp. If you had to hand this job to a complete stranger tomorrow, could they do it based on this document?
And if the answer is no, you have a vulnerability.
A major vulnerability.
So if we boil this all down, the takeaway isn't that turnover is avoidable. People leave. That is life.
People leave, but compliance shouldn't leave with them.
The goal is to build a system where the deadline, the access, and the process are assets of the nonprofit, not secrets of the employee. Imagine your compliance as a standalone asset you could sell. That is how robust it needs to be.
That is it. You want to reach a point where resignation is just an HR inconvenience, not a legal emergency.
And that frees up the organization to focus on what actually matters, which is the mission. You can't change the world if you are stuck on the phone trying to reset a password for the state of Mississippi.
Well said.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave you listening with a challenge. If you are listening to this and thinking, I have no idea what our password is for New York, don't panic, but do act.
The best time to document your system was yesterday. The second best time is right now. Go check your logins, see whose email is on the account.
Simple steps to save massive headaches later.
Absolutely. Knowledge is most valuable when it is shared.
If you found this discussion helpful, you can find additional compliance guides and visual resources at ironwoodregistrations.com. Thanks for listening.